Coaches, welcome back to Quick Taps. It's all about uncovering some cool learning moments, especially within the coaching space. Today, I've got with me Alex, who's a good friend, and we've been on a pretty cool coaching journey so far. Alex, welcome to Quick Taps.
Thank you, Warren. Appreciate it, mate.
I know it's pretty late where you are in New Zealand. But look, mate, pretty cool to have you here. I just want to delve deep into the coaching space. I think you've got some incredible golden nuggets you can share with our coaches and players and everyone that watches this. But mate, as a starting point, give us a quick snapshot of your coaching journey so far.
Yeah, no dramas. I guess I started in the UK with England Rugby being a coach developer, so working quite heavy in the community space with my local club down in Brighton, coaching Hove. And then one day I decided to take the leap of faith and move to New Zealand to pursue rugby. Again, coached in the community with a club called Darfield. And then from there, was I guess fortunate enough to go through all the age grades, representative rugby coaching through Canterbury, which is um, in the South Island. So Canterbury under 19s, Canterbury B, and then fortunate enough to then be asked to be part of the Crusaders Academy in Christchurch, and then I led their age grade Crusade under 20s to their first national championship last year. And then I guess I've been fortunate enough now to be appointed part of New Zealand's under 20s coaching group as well for this year. So um, along with that, I also coach professionally with Canterbury NPC team, which is the local provincial competition here in New Zealand. So and that's their first team. Very proud Union Canterbury. So very fortunate to be part of that group. And I guess that's me so far, mate.
Mate, that's an awesome journey. And mate, there's so much gold in there for coaches, especially. It's like started in the community space. I almost feel like I've been there with you right from the start of that journey, but just to watch you grow and develop. But probably the most important thing here for coaches to take away is um, it's just about getting the reps in, building the reps, building your sort of own journey, paving your own way, putting yourself out there. You obviously I won't say it's a risk because you went with your wife, your your now wife to New Zealand. So we won't say there's a risk, but most important thing is just that sort of persistence where you just kept working to build a name for yourself. And obviously, there's some ups and downs along this journey and this path, but it's about keeping your head down and just learning and working on your craft on a daily basis. So it's pretty cool to see, mate.
Yeah, I think sometimes more you fail, the more you learn. I guess about yourself and where you can get better, but also where you succeed, you can probably learn just as much. And you always often tell players to make their super strength their superpower and be the best at it. So I think as a coach, you've got to do the same thing as well. So actually understand who you are, what your strengths are, and really sell that to people that you want to work with and work to. Like I've been turned down. When I first went for my Canterbury job, got turned down a couple of times. Went away, built on my craft. And then I was lucky enough that they took a leap of faith with me and they gave me my first ever professional coaching job in New Zealand. So persistent pays off, and you gotta want it. I guess that's the main thing.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. That's awesome. Um, Talking about working on your craft, what is the skill that excites you the most at the moment? What's the skill that you love coaching?
Kind of stole it from American football. I was watching this clip on uh, how these coaches train quarterbacks, and they use the term eyes downfield. So whenever a quarterback takes a snap, instantly his eyes are looking down the field, scanning for that space. going through his routes, where's the best receiver, who's open, who's covered, and the amount of information they've got to process within 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds before they've got to throw that ball. So how I relate that back to rugby is our ability to scan on the run, um, communicate effectively on what they're seeing, and then listen to the communication that you're receiving and put that into an action. And I reckon that's probably a very underutilized skill that we haven't really tapped into is how to see how to make decisions effectively and on time, but also under pressure when it matters the most. So that's probably where we're exploring at the moment.
I love it. That's it fuels all my biases. Yeah. Now keep plugging away. Talking about skills, what would you say if we talk about that sort of um eyes or decision-making process, really, what would you say is the whether it's one, two, three, but what is the most important skills uh a player now at this very moment can go away and try and master? What would be that sort of top bracket of skills that you deem as important for every young player to go and master?
Um, so I always try and relate it back to the game, and I guess there's four four core skills that I believe are the fundamentals of the game. And these are skills that you can easily measure. Obviously, with decision making, it's hard to measure all the time. So these always come back to what are the most actionable actions in the game. So you think about how many passes are actually made in the game. I think in a game over here, you're looking at close to 300 passes are actually made in the game. Um, Running, how many times do you run with the ball, without the ball, into space effectively, efficiently? Um, how many times do you actually then try and beat a man, beat a defender? So I think running and how to do that effectively is critical. Ball into contact, so how many rucks there are. Um, so taking the ball into contact, and then the cleans that go with that. So how to effectively clean a ruck. I think the numbers of the day. There's say there's 300 passes. There's equally 200 rucks within that game too. So and then the last one is t tackle. So those four got to have a bit of defense in there. Those four are probably the biggest actionable actions, measurable skills that you can develop at a young age all the way through.
Yeah, no, you're 100% spot on there. That's definitely the core four that I utilize on a daily basis in my own practices because that's the foundations of the game. So yeah, any young player or any coach, if you design it based around the game. So no, that's awesome stuff. Uh, if you can give a coach any piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, Biggest one, mate, would be how to extract feedback from a player. And I guess what I mean by that is always trying to look at it two ways of the player receives feedback is always intrinsic feedback and extrinsic. Um, so obviously extrinsic is other outcomes or video footage or coach telling a player, and then intrinsic is what the player has seen, has felt during that action. Um, Simple questions that I wrote down when I was just thinking about this was just asking the player, how did that look? Or how did that feel? Or your best rep looks like what? So just getting them to think about it and getting them to process it within their brains or visualization and how they've actually executed the skill. Um, that's probably the biggest thing I can probably preach at the moment.
Mm. Now that's very useful, and that's pretty cool stuff you can go and practice as a coach. You can be really intentional around how you prepare for that session. Because feedback, feedback is one of the hardest, it's probably one of the hardest skills to master around that communication piece. And like we all do, we don't get it right often
Yeah.
in which which can be a great measure of the environment you create because every interaction you can be really intentional around that. Now, that's pretty awesome piece of feedback. Um, one more question I reckon will be useful. What's been your biggest coaching failure so far?
Huh. Um, wouldn't say it's a failure. Um, I'd probably say it's probably something that coaches actually get quite a lot, but they probably don't admit it as much. But it's probably that imposter syndrome. Are you good enough for this player? Are you actually doing right by this player? And then you go to kind of a state of overthinking about it, and then you can kind of dip into self-critique a lot. But I kind of went into that my first year with Canterbury. I had a bit of a imposter syndrome, and we had a mental skills coach at the time called James, who came in and he imposed a lot of self-talk onto the players and used the self-talk to really help players through tough times. So I decided to try and give it a go. And I remember driving to work one day in the car and I had a little bit of self-doubt creep in. I was like, fuck, I'm gonna try this now and see what happens. And I just almost G'd myself up and saying, Nat, we got this. This is what we're gonna do. I just gave myself little goals throughout the day that I was gonna hit. I talked to a player, asked them around what their views were of the game from the weekend, and then you know, try and just build up that rapport with them and just little milestones like that that I could hit throughout the day that kind of gave me that boost of confidence that I needed, just to get out that little bit of a rut. So yeah, that's probably a journey that I've been on that I won't class as a failure, but a great learning moment for myself. Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful piece of advice there. Because the imposter syndrome, he sits there every single day. He gets me, he gets, I'd like to think he gets all of us, but I always revert back to, it's only because I care. It's only because I care about that moment, that interaction, that scenario, and I care about being the best I can possibly be. That's sort of how I try and deal with it. But I love the strategy because it's a simple strategy for everyone that listen to this to just whether you just write these things down, and use the self-talk method to put you in the best possible space. No, that's pretty awesome stuff. Look, Alex, I think you've given us a lot of gold here. There's a lot of gold here. Coaches, there's always take what you need to take, remove the other stuff. But more importantly, mate, good luck with the under 20s campaign that's coming up. Keep your head down, keep grafting, and I look forward to seeing you reach all the heights, coaching heights that you can, mate. And thanks for coming on the Quick Taps and sharing your journey.
I appreciate your time, Warren. Thank you.
Thanks for having you. Coaches, players, whoever's listening, please go and share this. Please subscribe.